All right, so this is a special Couch Coach Live College Football Week 5 preview. And of course, man, the first month of college football has been pretty good. I think you got the juggernauts are still around, of course. You got Clemson still doing their thing, and you also have LSU doing this thing, and also Georgia and Clemson and Alabama, of course. And a lot of stuff has happened during the month of college football that's very interesting. You're looking at the rise of a couple teams. You're looking at the Pac-12. I think the Pac-12 is being very, very well represented in this matchup, and it's been a very, very decent month. So of course, to get into it, let's talk about the intriguing matchups of Week 5. Now, of course, Notre Dame versus UVA. I think it's going to be a matchup of the week. I think this is the biggest game so far for both of these teams. Even Notre Dame, even though they went to Georgia and lost, so far this is their biggest game. Of course, Notre Dame versus Georgia was the biggest game. But when you look at this intriguing matchup, Notre Dame is very interesting because with them only losing by 7 last week, I think that's gonna be good for the committee going forward. And I think they're gonna still see the continuation of Georgia being successful in the SEC East. So that's good in their favor. Then you look at UVA, and I think UVA has so much to gain if they win in this matchup. Now, you look at if UVA wins this game, they go to Notre Dame and they beat the 10th ranked team in the country. You're looking at the ACC schedule for the rest of the year. It's going to be terrible. They don't have to play any more ranked opponents until they will play Clemson first week of December. So if everything pans out, you look at Virginia Tech matchup at the end of November, the last matchup, they could probably give them a headache. Everything else, I don't think necessarily they're gonna have a problem with Virginia Tech. Of course, it's a rival game, but I still think they're not gonna struggle, to be honest with you. They go to Clemson, not Clemson, but they'll go to Clemson for the ACC championship game. And say, for instance, they're probably going to be like a 3-touchdown underdog. And if they can they stay competitive with Clemson, and you look at if they play Clemson and maybe they lose by like 14 points or 7 points, this UVA team could be in a New Year's 6 game. That's where this win against Notre Dame could take them. So that's the good thing about that situation. Also, another intriguing matchup is Ohio State versus Nebraska. Of course, college game day is in Lincoln. So, of course, it's always going to be a rugged atmosphere. And, of course, it's going to be a 7:30 game. So, of course, it's going to be a very, very, very interesting game. Ohio State hasn't played a team offensively sound like a Nebraska yet. So that's going to be the intrigue of it all, where you're going to see Nebraska being able to kind of move the ball a little bit more against Ohio State, the Ohio State team that we have seen in previous situations. So you look at that from that matchup. That's going to be very, very interesting, of course. So that's one thing. The biggest thing is going to be that crowd and that momentum. And I think Nebraska's going to feed off that maybe in the first quarter, a couple of possessions. And, of course, you're going to see Nebraska kind of do their thing in the first quarter and what have you. And I think it's going to kind of tail off. And I think Ohio State will propel in this victory. And we'll get to the picks later on as well. Another interesting matchup is going to be Utah versus Washington State. Now, of course, these both teams are coming off of not embarrassing losses. More so Washington State came off an embarrassing loss. Now, of course, Utah lost to USC last week. And then also Washington State, they blew a 32-point lead to UCLA. And UCLA has been a joke all year round. This UCLA team, they was only averaging 14 points per game going into this matchup. You blew a 32-point lead against UCLA. UCLA couldn't score to save their lives. And also, what's going to be intriguing is the health of Utah. Now, of course, they may be without their quarterback, Tyler Hunter, or their running back, Zach Moss. So this is going to be a matchup where you're going to look at which team is going to rebound off their loss. And I think Utah, if they have back-to-back losses in this fashion, I mean, they're going to see themselves out of the top 25. Washington State is already outside of it. But if they lose again, both of these teams will if whoever loses this team, in essence, I think they can kiss their Pac-12 aspirations out the window instantly. And then I'm really intrigued about Washington State. Can they rebound off this loss? Because you're looking at the situation, for you to blow a 32-point lead, is either one going to do two things for you. Either it's going to make you stronger, or it's going to keep on carrying over to the weeks and weeks and weeks over. So this is going to be a huge test for Washington State. And of course, and they'll be on the road at Utah. So we'll see how that goes. So the players to watch this week in week 5. Ian Book, the quarterback from Notre Dame. Last week, he was solid. He had 275 yards passing, and he had 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions in inopportune times during Georgia. But they still had a chance to win this game at the end. So I want to see what he's going to do against this UVA squad, who's pretty much been very, very stout defensively. And of course, they have one of the best cornerbacks in the country. So we'll see how that matches up with UVA's pass defense. Jacob Eason, the quarterback out of Washington, formerly of Georgia. He's the ultimate, like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, as far as quarterbacks versus a win versus a loss. I mean, when he wins, when they're winning, he's impressive. I mean, he's almost, if you would account just the 3 games that he played in those 3 wins, he could be a Heisman. He could be a Heisman candidate. But in that one terrible loss, he looked terrible. In those 3 wins, he has almost 77% completion rate, 9 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards passing, which is, interesting when you look at it from that standpoint. But that's the thing. If he plays good and they win, Jacob Eason could be a Heisman. He can be a Heisman winner. And also Anthony Gordon, the quarterback from Washington State, which is very weird. Now, this was his deadline last week. This was in a loss. Now, I remember I was telling you about how they just lost to UCLA, blew a 32-point lead. So he went 41 for 61, 570 yards, and 9 touchdowns in that one game. They lost 67-63. Now, if he would have scored, if Washington State would have scored and ended up beating this team, Anthony Gordon's another guy who we look at could be a Heisman candidate as well. But of course, you lose to a UCLA team who was inept offensively all year. Like, to think that UCLA scored 67 points, and it's crazy. UCLA scored 67 points in one game. That's unfathomable. And then for them to lose it in that type of fashion, so of course he definitely would be in that Heisman conversation. And also, teams that are on upset alert this week: Penn State versus Maryland. This is going to be an interesting matchup. Penn State, this is their first road game, which is very interesting. So far, this is their first road game. They come into this game against Maryland. They had 2 weeks off, so they had 2 weeks to prepare for Maryland. So you think that's going to give them ample time to do their thing? I'm still leery on them because how they struggled against Pitt. Because Pitt was one of those teams where they were supposed to destroy Pitt. And of course, Pitt almost, in a sense, they did some stuff very self-inflicted to a point where they actually could have won this game, but it was on bad calls that pretty much propelled Penn State to win this football game. So then Maryland also is coming off a bad week. Them losing to Temple 2 weeks ago was it was awkward. It was one of those awkward losses. And of course, when Maryland is at home, they're like an offensive juggernaut. In those games, they scored 142 points combined at home. So this is like a recipe for disaster for a Penn State team that hasn't even been on the road yet, and they got a Maryland team who I think who's going to sneak into that Big Ten. They're going to be in that mix. They're going to be in one of those. They're going to be in a situation where they're going to be in the thick of it towards the end. Like we're going to probably talk about Maryland competing for the Big Ten championship, possibly, probably up until maybe like November. That's how I think they're going to fare in this month, in the month coming up in October, which I think they're going to have a pretty solid October for the most part. Also, Indiana at number 25, Michigan State. This is a trap game for Michigan State. Now, of course, Michigan State is going next. They're going to play Ohio State next week. So, of course, it's going to be one of the type of games where you look at it from that standpoint of are this team going to get up for Indiana team? Indiana's a sneaky sleeper, and do a lot of people really respect Indiana? But when you think about it from that standpoint, what is Michigan State? Are they really keying in on Indiana? Are they really thinking about Ohio State next week? And I think it's normal because a lot of people always say, well, you take it 1 week at a time, one game at a time. Come on now. We're all human. We look at stuff ahead of time. We don't even look what's in front of us. We look at what's going on in the future. That's human nature. And we can't expect 18 to 22-year-old kids to not think about that. And that's human nature. But I think even in this matchup, I think Michigan State, you're going to see them kind of struggle early, which I think that's fine. They're going to struggle early, and I think they're going to do some halftime adjustment. And I think they're going to really hone in and focus in the second half. And I think they're going to take care of business against Indiana. Also, let's do our Heisman power rankings. Now, of course, ranked number 1 in our Couch Coach Live Heisman power rankings, Jalen Hurts. I think even in the bye week, I couldn't take him off the list. I mean, what he has done, this is his body of work. Who completes 80% of their passes? Who does? Come on now. 880 yards and 9 touchdowns already. Jalen Hurts balling. So of course I couldn't take him off even on the bye week. So coming in second place this week, Tua Tagovailoa, the future quarterback of the Miami Dolphins. Last week he had 5 touchdowns and a blowout victory last week. He didn't even finish the game. Also, Jonathan Taylor. Finally, we have a non-running back at the seat of the table that has the power rankings. Now, last week he had 203 rushing yards and then 2 touchdowns versus Michigan. And that's one of those things where it's like, it may not be his Heisman moment, but when you see something like this and you're going to, then if Wisconsin has success, this could propel him to having his Heisman moment. And also honorable mentions this week, Justin Fields and also Joe Burrows. And I mean, I'm telling you, the list can go on as far as honorable mention. This Heisman race is very, very, very intriguing. I think it's one of those things where it might be 4 guys going to New York, honestly. I can see 4 guys going. At the rate we're going, and then you're looking at combined with these teams' success, I think Oklahoma's going to be successful. Alabama, of course, is going to be successful. And then even looking at Wisconsin, I think they passed their first test of the year, and I think they're going to be successful to a point where we gotta have to look at him, seriously. And also, you're looking at Justin Fields. Justin Fields, this could be a situation where he can be successful as well. I don't really see Ohio State really have a lot of hiccups per se. And then Joe Burrows of Auburn, same thing. Like, I mean, that's one thing. Said Joe Burrows, of course, Joe Burrows from LSU, and I don't think they can have some hiccups, but in the same token, this is going to be a very, very interesting race. I can really see 4 guys making it, especially at the quarterback position. Jonathan Taylor might tail off because it's just a simple fact of the running back, because these quarterbacks just having prolific stats this year. So, of course, let's put a bow on this week's show. We're going to do some picks. So, of course, number 12, Penn State goes to Maryland. Give me the Fighting Vernon Davises of Maryland University. I like Turtles. Number 18, UVA travels to Notre Dame. Give me the Fighting Brady Queens of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish in that matchup. We got number 21, USC against number 17, Washington. Give me the Fighting Nate Robinsons of Washington University. Got number 24, Kansas State versus Oklahoma State. Of course, give me the Fighting Josh Freemans of Kansas State University. Number 5, Ohio State travels once again to Lincoln, Nebraska for a primetime matchup Saturday night. So, of course, I have number 5, Ohio State, taking it, a.k.a. the Fighting Dwayne Haskins. And, of course, I have in our last matchup of the night, which is, I think, is going to be the Pac-12 After Dark game of the night. If you haven't watched Pac-12 After Dark, it's more than just a saying. It's actually a way of life. So, of course, we have Washington State versus number 19, Utah. Give me the Fighting Gardner Minshews of the Washington State Cougars in this matchup. So, this wraps up this week's special Couch Coach Live Week 5 college football preview. Now, of course, you can follow us on any of your favorite social medias, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, under Couch Coach Live. Also, check out our weekly podcast on all platforms, Apple, Spotify, anywhere where you get podcasts. Just search Couch Coach Live and you'll get our latest podcast. So, for signing off this week, this has been Couch Coach. This has been a special Couch Coach Live college football preview. And we'll catch you guys next week.